There is a revolution trying to improve how people work with financial advisors. Unfortunately, too many people still work with salespeople that are primarily focused on their own revenue. We know there's a better way, and in this episode, we're going to discuss how to match your needs with finding the right advisor for you. We're going to provide some insights on the questions that federal employees should be asking, and we're going to share questions that match the changing times to hopefully get better results for you. Welcome. I'm Ed Smith, President of Valor Wealth Partners, where we're dedicated to educating federal employees on how to maximize value from your complex and often underutilized benefits. I just hit a major milestone in the financial advisor industry where I hit 25 years of working with clients. This is a really big thing, and I've been doing some reflection with different clients and also internally of how we can make things better. So I wanted to share some of my insights for you if you're looking to find a new advisor or find your first advisor you're ever working with. Now, first off, I've had a lot of different titles over the years, and there's still a lot of them out there. Titles alone don't make the advisor. It's really you have to dig down and find out who they are and who the firm is to make sure it's really a good fit for you. Now, what you're going to see today is not your typical 10 questions. We will have a couple of those in the resource section, but realistically, we want to help guide you as far as why you're asking that question and how to get the most out of these questions when you're having those relationships. When you are looking for a new advisor, one of the things you want to be looking for is this is a mutual interview that you're doing. If you're just interviewing, if it's just on one side, you interviewing the advisor, and they're not looking back to see if you're a good fit for their organization, to have that long-term relationship, maybe they're just looking for a transactional situation, and they're not looking at spending many years with you. And that's one of the things you really should be able to look at, is to make sure that it's mutual on both sides. Another big factor when you're looking at this and considering the interview process with advisors is that take as much time as you need to make the right decision for you. If they have a 30-minute time limit and that's all, they don't extend that, or they don't say, hey, why don't you sit on this and sleep on it or think about it and come back, and if you have more questions, then maybe they're not looking at that relationship as well. You want somebody that will take the time to make sure it's a good fit. Nobody wants to waste time, and we don't want you to be going back in a couple years or in 6 months and trying to find another advisor because it just wasn't what the promises that were made, and there was really good sales done, but there really wasn't good relationship building. Okay. Like I said, there's a lot of resources that are at the end of the video or in the notes section for the video. We will also have the questions listed out just as we go through them. They'll be on our website. There's no email required because we want to have this accessible for everybody to make sure everybody is getting a good fit when they're looking for that advisor, because this is something you should be taking very seriously when you're hiring somebody for long term for you and your family. The first section we're going to tackle is what I'm calling the basics, and some basic things that you should be looking at with the advisor and just making sure that you're getting a good fit for here. So one of the first things we're looking at is, who are you going to be working with? Are you going to be working with a team of people or a solo advisor? And for different people, they have different needs. So don't feel that one is better than the other. For some people, one is and one's not. So I'm going to read some very specific questions because I spent a lot of time being very particular about the words you use and how you work these through, and you'll see some of these through. You'll also notice a lot of these are very general, so while we are talking about a slant to federal employees, not every question is geared towards a federal employee. They could be used for a lot of different places or a lot of different people, but you will see a twist that a lot of these questions do have specific questions that federal employees should be asking to make sure you're maximizing someone that knows what you should be doing when you're looking at these types of relationships. So let's look at the team or solo advisor. Who will you be working with? Can you explain how your team meets with clients, and will you be assigned to a primary advisor? So these are questions really relating to who you'll be working with and how you'll be able to do this. This is a very important thing to make sure that you are working with somebody and talking to somebody that you'll be working with, not you talk to one person and then you're pushed off to somebody else that you might work with in the future. It's always nice to be able to meet with who you're going to be talking to, and if you have that primary person, and how you like it. Sometimes people have different knowledge and experience, so working on a team could be very beneficial for you. Another big question when you're looking at the basics is the location of the meetings. How often will you meet in person versus virtually, like a Zoom call or something else? So you have to be able to look at what that relationship is going to be. Is it going to be in person? Do you have to pay for parking? Do you have to deal with traffic? Or can you do most of these things virtually, which we found a lot of people prefer at these times? You're also looking at what happens if you move to different states. What happens if your agency decides to transfer you, or you decide to go to a different place, you retire in a different location? Will you be able to continue the relationship? This is a very big concept because a lot of people are looking at they might possibly change in the future, and they don't want to have to do this whole process over again. So they want to be with an advisor, not just a company, but with an advisor that can handle them in multiple locations in different areas. So that's a very big thing to be able to look at. Other thing to have to look at when you're looking at the basic is who are the typical clients of the firm? When you look at this, you have to look at one of the biggest questions for federal employees is, do they have a niche or a specialty? Specifically, do they work with federal employees? And not do sometimes or do they occasionally see a federal employee, but do they know federal employees inside and out? Do they not only know their benefits, but do they have resources that they can get to that are beyond their knowledge? Because there is a lot of complexity with federal employees, and there's very hard for one person to know everything about all the unique things. We learn things every day with different things. It's just because as you grow, you meet a new situation, and how do you expand? Where do you go to get those different types of information to help federal employees? So that is very important. Not do they occasionally do it? Do they work with everybody? But federal employees have some very unique things that, especially when you're looking at these benefits, that a mistake can be very costly and can cost you something that could be for the rest of your life. So you definitely want to be able to make sure that they specialize with federal employees. Okay. Another question: are there similarities among clients, like an age or a stage in life? Do they work with people that are all ready to retire? Do they work with younger people? Is something that's there? How many clients do you serve? Some people want a small firm, and others like a big name. And it really depends on where your comfort level is. Some people are concerned that a smaller firm might not be able to handle all of their needs, and some people just don't like big brand names, like big box names, and that's okay. It's whatever is best for you, and that's why it's not just the question, but it's the why on these different things. All right. A question to ask an advisor is, what are you looking for in your ideal client? All right. Now, again, before I said this is a two-way conversation. It's sort of like when you go into an interview for a job. You're always going to be asked, do you have any questions for you? And this is your time to really be saying, hey, am I the ideal person that you want to be working with, or do you just take everybody? So it's very important to look at these things. And this is something that when you're looking on a deeper relationship to try to get this question answered, how do you try to understand what is most important to me and my family? It's not just about a product or a service or an investment solution. It's about understanding what's important to you so that the best results can be there. And sometimes there needs to be some very deep conversations before solutions can be provided. So that understanding of who you are is a very big thing. So some companies have a very defined process or ways to be able to draw that out of you to be able to do it. Other companies, they just try to guess when they're doing that, and that's not a good solution either. Okay, the next area that we're going to be talking, our big concept, is going to be the services. All right, and so what we want to start talking about first here is the scope of work. All right, and so let's define that. All right, so can you describe the type of relationship you have with clients? Examples. Sometimes they're very specific transactions, like they're an investment guru or an insurance salespeople. And if that's what you're looking for, that's great for you. If you only want investments or you only want insurance and you want to move on, you're just looking at one solution, a transactional relationship is perfectly fine. But if you're looking for a longer-term relationship that's a lot deeper, a lot more encompassing, then you want to be able to find out how to get that strong long-term relationship through financial planning, and that takes a lot more time and energy. Obviously, if you're just looking for the investment guru and that's the primary focus, then there's probably a lot less questions that you'd probably want to be asking in those different types of areas. Okay. If you're looking for that long-term financial planning relationship, then you really want to try to find out if there's any specialties or where they provide advanced planning expertise. Okay, and this could be federal employees. Again, looking at this, you've already asked this a little bit, but again, you might ask it in a different way. All right, so what makes you different while serving federal employees? And you want to find out their knowledge, their experience, what types of things that they've been able to do, maybe some things that they found out. If you're asking questions about tax planning, what is your process to review tax returns? And here's a little secret. If they do not look at your tax return, they're not doing tax planning. They may say they do tax planning, and that might be, should I do a Roth or should I do a traditional? But at the end of the day, tax planning really takes into consideration their tax return and how they're paying taxes. There's a lot of unique information that you can find, but you have to find an advisor that understands this if that's something that you're really looking for. Federal benefits, like specifically FEHB or Federal Employee Health Benefits. How do they review your health insurance plan? So you're asking very pointed questions for trying to find the expertise that you're looking for. If you have an area that you need a better clarity for yourself, or you're like, I just haven't been able to look at this or haven't been able to find this, ask a very specific question. Here are 3 very good ones just on those specific topics that we work with or we see all the time. Another thing is do you bring in other advisors when a situation is too complex? And how are they paid? I can tell you this from 25 years in the business. I know a lot. I've seen a lot of different things, but I don't know everything. And there's times that I need help with other people because they have a better expertise than me. Maybe it's student loans. Maybe it's Medicare planning. And we have to bring in those different people. So one, you want to see, are they willing to accept help from other advisors and admit that they don't know everything? That's a very big thing. And two, will you be responsible for paying that? Or will they be paying it out of their resources on the overall plan because they're the ones that need to get this extra help? Finally, in this area, in the scope of the relationship, you want to see samples of what they do. So can I see samples of the reports that you create? This is very big because this shows you the type of analysis that they do, and it gives you a better insight than just talking about, oh, we do this and we do this. You'll actually see the depth of the analysis, how many reports they generate, how detailed are they, the type of conversations that you'll have around this. So this gets very specific on a lot of different areas to help you out on these different things. Okay, next let's jump into frequency of meetings. How often will we meet? Is there a limit or extra cost for additional meetings? This is very important because some people want to meet on a very frequent basis and other people say once a year is perfectly fine. It really depends on what's beneficial for you and finding out what that level of attention will be for you. If it doesn't match what you need or it's too much, which can actually happen, you want to be able to make sure you're finding that out earlier in this relationship. Now let's look at qualifications. All right, when we start looking at qualifications, we're looking at a couple of different things. The first section is education. Are you a certified financial planner? Or any designations that you might possibly have. Now, this is a very important thing that a lot of people ask this question and they say that this is the only thing. Well, if you're not a CFP or a certified financial planner, then you're not a good advisor or you don't have that credentials. I disagree with this. Even as a CFP, I disagree with this. I think that you need to have the knowledge on the team, but not every person on the team needs to have that CFP. I think that you need to follow certain principles and have that education and looking at where you're able to do this, but not everybody has to have a CFP on that. I think that sometimes people are in the education process. It takes a couple years for most people to receive their CFP, and sometimes people don't start it from day one. I didn't. I was many years into being in the business before I even started studying for the CFP, never mind actually attaining the designation. So don't discredit somebody just because they don't have that. I think that's a very big point that a lot of other places are very harsh on that, and I disagree. I think that overall the team has to have that knowledge, but not every specific person has to have that level there. You do want to have a different level of advanced knowledge or trying to improve yourself and improve that education. That is very important, though, I do feel. Please describe your knowledge with federal employee benefits. How did they get that knowledge? How do they keep improving? How do they keep evolving and making sure they're on top of the changing things of what's happening with federal employees? This is very big for federal employees to make sure not only that they have that knowledge, but where do they get it and how do they keep improving on that knowledge? Here's something when you start looking at that, the conversation that you're having with the advisor, that I really love this question is, you mentioned a specialty in blank area, the specific area. How do you stay ahead of the curve? So now you're taking exactly something that you mentioned that was very important to you, and you're saying, I want to understand how you have continuing education on this, how you make sure that you're maintaining this level of expertise, not, I did it 20 years ago, so I'm an expert on it today. That's not going to cut it. Okay? So years of experience. How long have you been in the industry? How long have you been a lead advisor in a fiduciary capacity to your clients? We're going to talk about fiduciary a little bit, but so it's a little bit of teaser there. And then how long have you been serving federal employees? All things that are looking at the experience and length. When you look at this, again, just like the designations, don't discredit somebody because they don't have the time in the industry, but they should be on a team that has that industry experience or time with federal employees or time serving clients. I've known people that have been in the financial services industry and then they move to working with clients, but they've only been doing it for a couple of months and they don't have the experience or knowledge to be out there by themselves. So that's not necessarily a good thing. They say, oh, I've been working in the financial service industry for 10 years, but they've only been working with clients for a couple months. They might not have the knowledge and experience to help you out, or at least at the level you want. but their team might be a bigger, broader depth of that knowledge and that experience. So that's really what you want to be able to look at, some on that team approach. And that's why I like the team versus a solo advisor, because you're getting a more depth of people that have different experiences. All right. And when we're looking at working as a team, let's dig into some of those questions. What is the expertise of other members of your team? I'm concerned about your lack of knowledge in this specific area. Maybe it's taxes or something else. Can you describe how you were supervised? So this is talking about challenging something that they say or a concern you're having and making sure that somebody else is watching that work or helping them through that area. Does everyone on your team specialize with federal benefits? This is a really good question. It goes back to, does your firm specialize with federal benefits and federal employees? Now, not every employee is going to have the same knowledge, but certain people have different tasks and things that are very important to you. Like we have somebody on our team that works with the TSPs and how to be able to log into the system and help you do that. Not a knowledge I have. But so through the depth of the team, we're able to work on federal employee benefits, and that's something that everybody should be knowledgeable. So if you talk to somebody's on vacation, somebody else can help you out in that different area, if that's important to you. All right. I did mention the fiduciary status, so let's go into that area. There's a big question out there that's, are you a fiduciary? And this, quite frankly, is the wrong question to be asking. And it's on most questionnaires that they ask, are you a fiduciary? The problem with this is that most financial advisors today are fiduciaries. The problem is they're not fiduciary 100% of the time, which means they're fiduciary when they say hello, they're fiduciary when they're maybe trying to understand you a little bit better, but then they switch to a product sale and they're not longer a fiduciary. If there's ever a commission involved with some type of a product sale, they've taken out their fiduciary hat. They're supposed to tell you when they're no longer fiduciary. Not all of them do, but you need to know if they're when they're not a fiduciary. So the question on this really comes down to, is there ever a time when you're not acting as a fiduciary? This is a very big question, and I think that a lot of people stop with, are you a fiduciary? And they're not realizing that at some point they're actually not acting in the capacity that's in your best interest. So it's a very big question to be able to look at. Going beyond a fiduciary relationship, let's start looking at cost and compensation. Now, why is it important to look at both cost and compensation? The reason is because they're two completely different types of things. The cost relates to the value you receive as the client. The compensation identifies conflicts of interest during the relationship. So let's talk about these a little bit, these two very specific things a little bit differently and see what kind of questions we can get on this. All right, the first, cost. What is the total cost to work with you? And things like advice fees, asset under management fees, or called AUM fees, hidden fees like expense ratio, the cost for an investment that you might have, and then transaction fees. You might have an annual fee or a transaction fee if you're going to be getting out of one investment or into another. So it's looking at the total cost of all of these fees because this is what you're actually paying. Now on compensation, you want to look at things like, and again, remember we're looking at for conflicts of interest here. You're looking at how are you paid? Do you get bonuses or incentives based on the revenue you generate? And are there any gifts or trips you receive from vendors or the company you work for? These are very big things that could sway an advisor to do one thing versus another. What are you looking for here? Maybe you're looking for salaried employees. Maybe you're looking for people that have bonuses based off of how they work on the team or the people they help, not the revenue that they're generating in the company or how much in assets they bring into the company. Those are not things that help with conflicts of interest or help to mitigate them. Now, any advisor is going to have a conflict of interest. I have them, they all do, but we try to manage them and make them as small as possible, and that's something you want to be able to look at with the relationship that you're having is, what are the costs you're paying to make sure you're getting good value, and then is the advisor that you choose has a reduced conflict of interest to make sure that they're going to be working in your best interest at all times, and that's a very big thing. All right. Now let's start looking at investment management as a bigger concept. And investment management is one of those areas where a lot of people focus so much time when they're trying to find an advisor. But as we've talked about, we've been talking about a lot of other concepts prior to this because there should be a bigger depth than just looking at the investments that you have for that advisor. So let's look at the requirements first. Am I required to move all of my money to your firm? And do I have any say in the investments you use? Now, again, this is a big thing that a lot of times that now, because of advisors are charging on the amount of assets they manage, that they want to force you to move everything to them so they can charge you and make more revenue. That's not always a good thing. There is a big conflict here. So you want to be able to say, do you have any control on both which assets you keep and the say in the investments that you choose to be able to do? And that's about a conversation about how they manage money. When you look at the investments specifically, let's look at some questions here. What is the process for the investments you are responsible for? And again, that is, they are responsible for the investments when you hire them to do these. What is your performance? Now, this is a trick question because no advisor should promote themselves on getting a higher rate of return or more revenue or more performance for you. All right? Because the markets go up and down. Now, they might have a unique process. They might have some tax savings. They might have something else. But if an advisor is totally selling you on their performance is better than anybody else that's out there, run. This is not a good way to be able to look at if an advisor is better for you, because there is no way that an advisor can consistently beat the markets over 8% of the cost that they're charging you. It's just not an impossible thing. There are a lot of good things that an advisor can do with investment management, but performance isn't always the one thing. You want to be able to make sure that they're doing good returns or returns consistent to the risk levels that you're at, but not necessarily saying that they're going to be able to beat a market or any type of specific index. Okay. Here's a unique one. Can you provide an example of an error and how you made the client whole? We're all human. We all make mistakes. It's how we correct the mistakes that make us a better person. And so you want to understand if a mistake happens or when a mistake happens, are they going to do everything that they possibly can to take care of you? And that's one of the things you really want to be able to look at. When we look at the federal side of things, what guidance do you provide on my TSP, and does this cost extra? Some advisors can help manage your TSP in keeping the TSP, but it is going to have a cost to it because there's a cost that's associated to the advisor. Other advisors will just give you mere guidance for that, maybe say on an annual review, and it's not going to cost you anything extra because it's already built into the cost of the advice that they're possibly giving you. So you really want to be able to figure out, are you going to get the guidance on your TSP? It's only 5 funds. Do you need a lot of guidance? Generally, no. But some people have difficulty actually executing and making sure that happens. So some advisors can provide a lot of value in actually getting paid to manage your TSP because people aren't doing it themselves, so they forget to do it and they're stuck in one fund where maybe they should have changed to a different one. So there can be value there. It just really depends on what's best for you. Okay. Cash reserves, cash and reserve management. Now, this is an area that I have a little bit of problem with over the many years that I've been working with this. I've really disliked how a lot of companies manage cash for clients. So here's some questions for you. Do you have a system to help me maintain appropriate reserves? This helps you behaviorally feel really good about your investments. And the other question is, do you charge to manage my cash positions? Why this has bothered me so much is because I've been through the area of low interest rate environments where money market accounts were getting maybe 0.25%, if you're lucky 0.5%. And firms would charge you, say, 1%, which is the industry average to manage money. So they're charging you 1% and you're only getting 0.25%. So you're actually losing 0.75% on any cash you hold with an investment firm. That just is not right. We need to do better as an industry, and we need to be able to say, hey, on cash positions, even if it's getting a 5% rate of return, we're not going to charge you on this. So this is a very big question you should be asking your advisor is, do you charge me on a very low yielding investment that you're really not providing a lot of guidance? And they might say, well, yes, because it's part of your mix. That's fine, but they don't have to charge you on it. We don't have to charge on every dollar that we manage for a client. Sometimes it's just doing the right thing. So this is a big question to be able to look at when you're evaluating of how they manage those investments on that. We're getting pretty close to the end. We got a couple more questions here. So let's look at technology. All right. Technology has changed a lot over the years. We've been inundated with AI and with note takers and making us more efficient. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you want a firm that's embracing these technologies and using them smartly and really evaluating before they roll out new technology. So one of the questions is, are you implementing these new technologies? The next question is, how are you protecting my privacy and sensitive information? This is huge. And a lot of times I've talked to firm owners that say, oh yeah, we've implemented this AI, we've done this note-taking software that captures this and gives me a summary of all of these types of stuff. So great. Where is this stored? Is this deleted? How is this done? And so you just want to be able to make sure that the advisor has done their research to make sure they're protecting you the best they possibly can. Again, breaches happen with data, but we want to be able to make sure that we mitigate and we reduce these as much as we possibly can. And you want to make sure that your advisor takes as much care with your personal information as you try to do for yourself. Okay? The last section is why. How are you different from other advisors, and why should we hire you compared to other advisors? This goes into all of these different types of questions we have talking about. Specifically, do you work with federal employees? Do you understand me? But really, it's looking at that last question. If they can't say why they're a better fit, that's a problem. Now, a lot of times we'll get to conversations like this with clients and we'll say, you know what, we're not. This is something that you have to really be looking at different things. Not every advisor is a perfect fit for you, and not every client is a perfect fit for that advisor. So you have to be able to make sure that you're really making sure that they're. All right. The last thing I really want to talk about is to research this thoroughly. There's a lot of information out there available for you. So things like their own website, to include their disclosures. Read the disclosures that they have, that they're required to have on their website. And if they don't have any disclosures, there should be a big red flag of saying, why aren't there disclosures on their website? Another thing is the regulatory websites, sort of like the SEC or Security and Exchange Commission or FINRA. There's links to both the broker check or know your advisor websites from those different things. So you have links in the notes section. You can take them out. And also websites of any credentials that they use. So if they're a CFP or Certified Financial Planner, go to the CFP website. Make sure they're in good standing. Make sure that they actually have that designation. Not that anybody would ever lie, but you definitely want to double check these different things to make sure that you've done everything you can on your due diligence to make sure this is really good. So we've given you a lot of information. Like I said, all of these questions will be available for you, so you can actually download that. Just go to the link. It'll bring you to our website, and you can be able to download these and share them. And hopefully this is very beneficial for you. In summary, I just want to come up with a couple of different things I want to be able to help emphasize to make sure you're really getting the most out of this. First off, do your research. There's a lot of resources out there. Take your time. Make sure you're doing your due diligence to make sure this is good for you. Interview until you feel comfortable. Don't feel pressured that you have to do something here. Sleep on it. Take a week. Take some time. Make sure this is a good long-term relationship for you. You should never be pressured into anybody's. Make sure they are the right person or team to help you and your family. Again, remember, this is a mutual interview. If they're going to work with anyone, maybe they're not a good fit for you. So you want to be able to make sure they're interviewing you just as you're interviewing them to make sure that it's a good fit for everybody in the relationship. We want the best for you and your family, so please get conflict-free, unbiased advice. Until the next time, we hope this has been very helpful for you.